Welcome to our deep dive into the world of deep work.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be taking excerpts from Cal Newport's book, Deep Work, Rules for Focused Success in a Distracted World.
Right.
Have you ever, noticed how hard it is to really focus these days?
Yeah, it seems like our attention is just constantly being pulled in a million different directions.
Exactly. And Newport argues that this constant distraction is actually making us less productive and less fulfilled.
Mm-hmm.
He says that the ability to do deep work, to focus without distraction on a demanding task,
Right.
is becoming a superpower
It really is.
in our increasingly distracted world.
And he's not just talking about getting more done either. He's
Yeah.
talking about producing higher quality work, a deeper sense of satisfaction, and even rewiring our brains for greater focus and creativity.
Okay, that sounds enticing.
Yeah.
Can you explain exactly what he means by deep work?
Yeah.
It sounds kind of intense.
He defines it as professional activities performed in a state of distraction, free concentration, that push your cognitive capabilities to their limit.
Okay.
These efforts create new value, improve your skill, and are hard to replicate.
Got it.
So it's not just about putting your head down and grinding away.
Right.
It's about reaching a level of cognitive intensity that allows you to produce work that is truly exceptional.
It makes you wonder how many of us are actually tapping into this level of focus.
Right.
I mean, think about how much time we spend each day checking email or scrolling through social media or just getting pulled into random distraction.
It's a problem. It's a real problem.
It is.
Newport calls this the principle of least resistance,
Okay.
which basically means that in a work environment,
Mm-hmm.
without clear feedback, we tend to gravitate towards the easiest behaviors, even if they're not the most productive.
So we're choosing to check email or scroll through social media because it feels easier in the moment,
Exactly.
even if it's ultimately preventing us from doing our best work.
And this is compounded by the fact that shallow work, all those quick reactive tasks, are often more visible and easier to measure than deep work.
Oh, interesting.
So we get rewarded for being busy, even if we're not actually accomplishing anything meaningful.
It's like we're confusing motion with progress.
Right. And the book has this crazy anecdote about the Boston Consulting Group.
Yeah.
They found that a culture of constant connectivity actually hurt employee well-being and productivity.
Really?
But guess what? They kept encouraging it because it felt more efficient in the moment.
Wow. That's really eye-opening.
Yeah.
Okay, so clearly we need to find a way to push back against this culture of distraction and embrace deep work.
Yes.
But before we get into the strategies, I'm curious, what are some concrete examples of how deep work can actually transform someone's life?
Well, Newport tells this great story about a guy named Jason Ben who used deep work to make a radical career shift.
Okay.
He was working as a financial consultant, making about $40,000 a year, but he was unhappy, and he wanted to break into tech. So he decides to learn how to code.
All right.
But here's the thing. He knows he struggles with focus.
Oh.
So he took this really unconventional approach.
Okay, what did he do? Lock himself in a basement with no wifey.
Pretty much. He locked himself in a room with no computer, just textbooks, note cards, and a highlighter.
Wow.
He knew that if he wanted to master this new skill, he had to train his mind to focus deeply.
Did it work? Could he even code after that?
It did. It was tough at first, obviously.
Right.
But he eventually learned to concentrate for hours on end. He went on to not only complete this super intense coding boot camp,
Yeah.
he actually graduated as the top student in his class.
Wow.
And after that, he landed a job as a developer at a hot San Francisco startup,
Good for him.
making over double his previous salary.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's a pretty dramatic example of how deep work can pay off.
It is.
It really shows how developing this skill can be a game changer, especially in today's economy.
Right. We've shifted from an industrial economy to an information economy,
Mm-hmm.
where the most valuable skills are often the ones that require deep thinking, creativity, and problem solving.
So in this new landscape, deep work is kind of like a secret weapon.
It's more than that. I'd say it's becoming a necessity.
Wow.
And it's not just for coders or tech workers either.
Right.
Think about anyone who needs to produce at a high level.
Yeah.
Writers, artists, entrepreneurs, even executives making strategic decisions.
So how does Newport break down who benefits most from deep work in our current economy?
He identifies three groups.
Who?
The first is people who work well with intelligent machines.
Okay.
It's not about being replaced by AI. It's about using it as a tool to amplify your deep work skills.
Oh,
like Nate Silver, who uses algorithms and data analysis to make those amazingly accurate election predictions.
Right.
He's not writing code,
Yeah.
but his work requires deep focus and a sophisticated understanding of data.
That makes sense. So it's not about fearing the robots,
Right.
but figuring out how to work with them effectively. What are the other two groups that he mentions?
The second group is what he calls superstars.
Mm-hmm.
Those who have mastered their craft to such a degree that they become sought-after experts.
Okay.
Think of someone like David Heinemeier Hansson, who created the Ruby on Rails framework that powers a ton of popular websites.
Right.
That level of impact comes from honing your skills to the point where you can produce something truly exceptional.
So it's about becoming so good at what you do that you rise above the noise and become indispensable.
Yeah.
What's the third group?
The third group is those who have the capital to invest in new technologies shaping the direction of this economic shift.
Got it. So basically, if you can master deep work, you're setting yourself up for success in this new world.
Absolutely. It gives you a significant advantage.
Okay. I'm convinced deep work is valuable. It can transform your life.
Yeah.
And it's essential for success in the modern economy.
Mm.
But I have to admit, I'm also feeling a little intimidated.
Yeah.
Like, how do we even begin to cultivate this superpower when we're constantly bombarded with the distractions?
That's a great question, and that's what we're going to explore next.
Okay.
The good news is that Newport offers a ton of practical strategies for overcoming distractions and building a deep work practice.
Okay.
And the even better news is that it doesn't require locking yourself in a room with no computer.
Okay, good. I was worried about that. So where do we start?
Right.
How do we begin to tame those distractions and reclaim our focus?
Yeah. One of the first things Newport suggests is to think about your deep work philosophy.
Okay.
It's basically a framework for how you structure your time and environment to support deep work.
So like a customized approach based on your personality and work style.
Exactly. He outlines 4 main philosophies:
Okay.
monastic, bimodal, rhythmic, and journalistic.
Okay, let's break those down.
Okay.
What's the monastic philosophy?
That one's about eliminating shallow obligations as much as possible and
right.
creating a distraction-free environment.
Got it.
Think of writers who go off to remote cabins to work on their books.
Okay, so that's probably not the best fit for someone who has a lot of meetings or needs to collaborate regularly.
Right. That's where the bimodal philosophy comes in.
Okay.
It's about dividing your time into clearly defined chunks, some for deep work and others for everything else.
Yeah.
You might have a few days a week where you go completely monastic, shutting out all distractions, and then other days where you're handling emails, meetings, and other shallow tasks.
So it's like toggling between two modes, intense focus, and then handling the inevitable shallow work.
Exactly.
That sounds a bit more realistic for most people.
Yeah.
What about rhythmic?
The rhythmic philosophy is about establishing a regular routine for deep work,
Okay.
making it a consistent habit, like going to the gym.
Mm-hmm.
You might decide to work deeply for 90 minutes every morning, for example, and then gradually extend that time as you get more comfortable.
So it's about building that deep work muscle through consistent practice. I can see how that would be helpful.
Yeah.
What about the last one, journalistic?
That's the most flexible approach. It's about finding opportunities for deep work whenever you can fit them in, like a journalist squeezing in writing time between interviews and deadlines.
So it's about being opportunistic with your focus, even if you can't control your schedule completely. Honestly, that might be the best fit for me right now.
Yeah, it could be a good starting point,
Okay.
especially if you have a lot of unpredictable demands on your time.
Okay, so figuring out your philosophy is step one.
Right.
But once you have that framework,
Yeah.
what are some practical tips for actually making deep work happen?
One thing Newport emphasizes is the power of ritual.
Okay.
He suggests establishing a set of routines and habits that signal to your brain that it's time to focus.
So kind of like creating a mental on-ramp to deep work.
Exactly. It could be something as simple as brewing a specific type of tea,
Okay.
or listening to a certain playlist before you start working.
Mm.
Or it could be having a designated workspace where you only do deep work.
I've heard that even just changing your clothes can help shift your mindset.
Oh, yeah.
Like putting on work clothes, even if you're working from home.
That's a great example.
Yeah.
It's about creating a clear separation between your deep work time and the rest of your day.
Rituals are powerful. What about the environment itself? Does that play a role in deep work?
Absolutely. Newport talks about the importance of grand gestures.
Grand gestures. What does that mean?
It means making a deliberate effort to create the conditions for deep work.
Okay.
It could be something as dramatic as checking into a hotel room to finish a project the way J.K. Rowling famously did when she was writing the last Harry Potter book.
Wow.
Or it could be something simpler, like setting up a dedicated workspace that's free from distractions.
I can see how that would help.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes just changing your physical space can make a big difference.
It's about sending a signal to yourself
Mm.
and maybe to others that deep work is a priority.
Okay, so rituals, environment, grand gestures,
Yeah.
all good strategies. What about collaboration? Is there room for that in a deep work practice?
There is, but it requires a strategic approach. Newport talks about the hub and spoke model.
What's that?
It's about participating in idea-generating hubs,
Okay.
like meetings or brainstorming sessions, but
Yeah.
then retreating to your own spoke to work deeply on those ideas.
Got it.
He gives the example of MIT's Building 20, which was this famously innovative space where researchers from different disciplines would randomly collide and spark new ideas.
Oh.
But they also had their own individual spaces to retreat to for deep work.
So the hub is for sparking creativity, and the spoke is where you turn those sparks into something tangible.
Exactly. You need both to be truly innovative.
This is great. It's like we're building a toolkit for deep work.
Yeah.
Any other essential tools we should add?
Newport borrows a concept from the book The 4 Disciplines of Execution.
Okay.
That can be really helpful when it comes to focusing your deep work efforts. He calls it working like a business.
What do you mean?
It's about applying 2 key disciplines.
Okay.
Focus on the wildly important and act on the lead measures.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Break those down for me.
Okay. Focus on the wildly important means identifying a small number of ambitious goals for your deep work time.
Okay.
So instead of just aiming for more deep work, you're choosing to focus on specific high-impact outcomes.
So it's about being intentional with your deep work time, not just racking up hours for the sake of it.
Exactly. And then acting on the lead measures means tracking your progress based on the behaviors that drive the desired outcome.
Okay.
So for deep work, that means tracking the time you spend in a state of deep focus dedicated to your wildly important goal.
So instead of just focusing on the end product, you're focusing on the process of deep work itself.
Right, because it's the consistent practice of deep work that ultimately leads to those exceptional results.
Okay. I'm starting to see how these strategies can work together.
Mm-hmm.
But let's be honest, even with the best intentions, distractions are everywhere. How do we actually tame all that shallow work that's constantly vying for our attention?
It does feel like a constant battle sometimes. Like we're surrounded by a sea of distractions.
That's true.
And it's so easy to get swept away. But one of the first steps to taming shallow work is simply becoming more aware of how much time we're actually spending on it.
You think we're more distracted than we realize?
Definitely, Newport cites research that found people who claimed to work 60 to 64 hours per week were actually only working about 44.
Wow.
And those who claimed to work more than 75 hours
Oh my gosh.
are really putting in less than 55.
Whoa, that's a pretty big difference.
Yeah.
So how do we get a more accurate sense of where our time is going?
Newport suggests scheduling every minute of your day.
Wait, every minute. Doesn't that sound a bit extreme?
It might seem that way, but it's about taking control of your time instead of letting it control you.
Right.
By planning out how you're going to spend your time each day, you're making a conscious decision about what's important.
So instead of just reacting to whatever comes up, you're being proactive about how you spend your time.
Right.
That makes sense. But does it have to be super rigid? Like, what if something unexpected comes up?
It's not about creating a prison schedule. It's about having a plan so you can make informed choices.
Right.
If something urgent comes up, you can adjust your schedule accordingly.
Yeah.
But the important thing is to be deliberate about how you spend your time.
Okay, so scheduling is one tactic. What else can we do to minimize those shallow work distractions?
Newport also suggests quantifying the depth of every activity.
What does that mean?
It means asking yourself how long it would take to train a recent college graduate to complete that task.
Okay.
The longer the training required, the deeper the work.
Okay, so something that takes months to train someone to do is deeper than a task they could pick up in a few days.
Exactly. It helps you differentiate between activities that are truly valuable and those that are just taking up space.
That's a really helpful way to think about it.
And once you've identified the shallow work in your schedule, try minimizing it. One way to do that is to actually schedule it into your calendar.
Wait, so instead of trying to avoid it completely, we're scheduling it in.
Right. It might sound counterintuitive, but by giving shallow work a designated time slot, you're keeping it contained.
Okay.
You're not letting it bleed into your deep work time.
So it's about setting boundaries, even for the shallow stuff.
Exactly. It's all about being intentional. But beyond scheduling and tactics, there's another crucial element to mastering deep work that's a bit more, let's say, psychological.
Well, this sounds interesting. What is it?
It's about embracing boredom.
Embracing boredom.
Our brains are so used to constant stimulation
Right.
that we've become addicted to novelty. We reach for our phones or refresh our inboxes whenever we feel even a hint of boredom.
It's true. Sometimes I feel like I can't even sit still for a few minutes without needing to check something.
That's the addiction talking. But here's the thing.
Good.
This constant stimulation is actually making it harder to focus.
Interesting.
When we train our brains to crave novelty, deep work starts to feel uncomfortable, even painful.
So we need to rewire our brains to be more comfortable with boredom.
Exactly. And one way to do that is to schedule internet blocks. It's similar to scheduling shallow work, but it's specifically about internet use.
Okay.
So instead of mindlessly browsing the web whenever we feel bored, we set aside specific times for checking email, social media, and all those online distractions.
So we're creating boundaries for our online time, just like we did with shallow work.
Right. It helps us regain control of our attention and break that addictive cycle.
Okay. I can see how that would be helpful. What about those times when we're not online, but we still feel that urge to reach for our phones or do something to distract ourselves?
That's where something called productive meditation comes in.
Productive meditation.
Oh,
It's about using undemanding activities, like walking, running, or even showering,
Oh, okay.
to think deeply about a problem.
Okay.
So instead of just zoning out during those activities, you're actually using them to engage in focused thought.
So you're actively thinking about a problem while you're on a walk, for example.
Exactly. It might feel a little strange at first,
Yeah?
but it's a really powerful way to train your mind to think deeply, even when you're not sitting at your desk. That's actually a really cool idea. It's like turning your everyday activities into opportunities for deep thinking. I'm definitely going to try that.
I think you'd be surprised at how effective it can be. But there's one more strategy that Newport suggests, and it's the most challenging one of all.
I'm a little nervous now.
What is it?
He recommends quitting social media for 30 days.
Whoa, that's a big one.
Hey,
I can't lie, I'm already feeling a little bit of FOMO just thinking about it.
I get it. It's a big commitment.
Yeah,
But here's the thing. Social media is designed to be addictive.
right.
It's constantly vying for our attention with notifications, updates, and endless feeds of content.
It really is like a digital slot machine, isn't it?
Exactly. And this constant stimulation is rewiring our brains, making it harder to focus and engage in deep work.
Wow.
So by taking a break from social media, even temporarily, you're giving your brain a chance to reset and recalibrate.
So it's like a digital detox.
Exactly. And it's not just about breaking the addiction, it's also about reassessing the role of social media in your life.
For most of us, it's not truly essential. It's just a habit, a distraction that's taking up valuable time and attention.
That's a really good point. I think a lot of us would be surprised at how much we could accomplish if we weren't constantly checking our phones.
Absolutely. And the best part is after 30 days, you can always decide to go back to social media if you want.
Right.
But chances are you'll have a much healthier relationship with it.
This has been so eye-opening.
Yeah.
It feels like we've covered so much ground, from defining deep work and understanding its importance to exploring practical strategies for cultivating this skill in our lives.
It's a journey, for sure. But it's a journey worth taking.
I agree.
Because when you embrace deep work, you're not just boosting your productivity, you're tapping into a source of deep satisfaction and meaning.
So as we wrap up this deep dive, what's one final thought we can leave our listeners with?
Remember, it's not about becoming a digital hermit or striving for some unattainable ideal of perfect focus. It's about being intentional with your time and attention, choosing to focus on what truly matters, and creating a life that's both productive and fulfilling.
That's excellent advice. Thank you for joining me on this deep dive into the world of deep work.
Thanks for having me.